Hello, all, and welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh. Today, I have me a very special guest, JL Odom. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I bought book one, so I'm really excited. I had like my reading list set ahead of time, and this is why I didn't want to do it because I keep finding books like yours, and I'm just like these are great books. So I'm like I have to. I've just been adding them as like those in between reads for my like 2025 reading, and I feel like it's been making me keep reading. So I love just finding books like yours where I'm like, oh, I didn't know like about this book, like when I was like making my list. And my friend actually suggests that to me. He's like, make sure you leave room, right, for
Yeah.
other books, like because you never know when you're gonna find somebody really good.
Something's going to pop up. You don't know what's going to mess up your TBR.
Yeah, that mountain, right? Or my friend goes, yeah, mine's a mountain. I'm like, mine's like a mountain range. My friend's like, mine's a tectonic plate. So I think that makes total sense. But I really appreciate you coming on today and, talking to us about, your books, your writing, and, just having a good chat. So I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. So what has your writing journey been like up until this point?
Well, some of it I would say is kind of stereotypical, kids, imagining climbing up trees, adventures, games that you just kind of start writing down because, I think a lot of kids do that. Not all the kids that do that decide to become writers,
Yeah.
but, that's definitely one of the most classic starting points. But honestly, I had some really amazing teachers in high school that helped sort of fuel my passion for literature and also for history, which I mean, my fantasy is more history flavored. It's not straight up historical fantasy, but definitely has that feel to it because I love history. I absolutely love history. And between those amazing teachers and a mom who's very passionate about literature and a bunch of just other really wonderful influences in my life, I loved reading. I loved writing. I wrote all the time, but I had no interest initially in becoming an author. But I did have a story that I was just kind of, like they say, wouldn't let you go. And I would
Yeah.
just write on it. It would be terrible. And then I'd shelve it and come back, a year or two later, try again. It'd be terrible. Shelve it. This happened multiple times. This did eventually become the book that I wrote, By Blood, by Salt. But, you wouldn't know to look at it. You wouldn't be able to recognize its origin
Yeah.
story to its present day at all. Um, but I initially didn't write to be published. I wrote for enjoyment. It was just a story that I loved sinking my teeth into. And the more I did it, the more certain themes emerged and the more the characters felt real to me. It was just a world that I got to live in for the fun of it. And I got more and more passionate about it. And eventually, after having written, you know, I don't know, 400,000 words of what became three books,
Yeah.
like, if I love this so much, I should share it. And the truth is, I would write regardless. Even if I never published a single word, I would still write. It's a joy to me. I write essays for fun. And I write in the margins of books. I write reviews for things, not because I expect people to read them, but because I need to get my thoughts on paper.
Yeah.
So for me, it's something I would do no matter what. I love it. I love trying to just put that perfect configuration of words together where it rolls off the tongue and it has beautiful cadence and it has a rich theme and it's layered. And that brings me joy even if no one ever saw it. But it's really cool if somebody gets to see it.
Yeah. I have to say, I think everybody's really glad that you did do that. I've had so many people because I had seen your book and I was like, oh, I added it, like to my list and everything pretty early on, in terms of like SPFBO. And I was like, oh, it just like spoke to me. I love the title. I love the cover. I checked out the blurb. I was like, oh, I'm a history teacher. I was like, this is like totally my
There
thing.
you go. I love
I
it.
had friends suggest it over and over again, not even because of Spitbo, just because they had seen it somewhere. And I just thought that was so cool. And that's why I love the contest. I think Mark does such a good job is I love it. When you guys get up there, I'm like, all right, let's do this thing. I'm like, follow. And then I go to the books and it's like Christmas for me. So I
It's
love
fun.
when they come out the list, I was like, oh, this looks really cool. So I think a lot of people, including Mark himself, right, gave you like a great recommendation. I just thought that was so cool. Like,
Oh my
was it
gosh, his
2 weeks
review
ago?
blew
Like,
me away.
yeah, it was really awesome. I don't normally do reviews, but I did that one. Like, yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good day.
I can imagine. But it reminds me of like I interviewed Kelly McCullough and I always call it like a journeyman's podcast. So it's like anybody that's like 1 to 6, which is weird because we used to be anybody like 1 to 3. So it's cool. We like kind of expanded, right? But it's interesting because he told me about his trunk novel, and his trunk novel became the Fallen Blade series of his that I absolutely loved. And he almost ripped it up and threw it in the trash. So I'm so glad that you brought that up and like, sharing this story, right, with everybody that's, this many words, these books, because I think it's just awesome because it's great to do for you. But I love it when people like you share those stories because they end up being some of my favorites because there's a reason that had to be told, right? So I just
Yeah.
think that that's like an awesome theme that we've had going on this year. Just seems like over and over again, books that people are really enjoying. And, I just think it's really cool to, just to keep touching on that like what you write really does matter. And not just you, but it's going to matter to somebody else, which I think is important.
And sometimes it needs that trunk period. My book had multiple trunk periods,
Yep.
and I think it was the better for them. It's sort of like with fields that have to like rest so that they can grow something again, and that's okay. And I think some people are scared of that. They're afraid that if they let it rest and they set it aside, it's dead. But it's
Yeah.
not dead. Sometimes it's just fermenting and then it's turning into something a little bit more nutritious.
Yeah.
And and then you get to go back to it and make it good, and then it's something way more beautiful than what you originally thought it was going to be. So
Such a good way to put it. Yeah, like my friend always like he calls it like his tree, right? He's like, I don't have trunk novels. He goes, I have saplings. He goes,
yes,
I'll come over
that's really
here like a
important.
garden, right? Yeah. He's like, I work over here. He goes, and then when this one needs me, he goes, I come back over and I prune or whatever, and spray some fertilizer or whatever on it. And I'm like, oh, like, and then my other friend calls it like the oven effect. Yeah, yeah.
That's fantastic.
That's awesome. Well, for our audience, you talked a little bit, about, genre, but like what genre or genres do you currently write in and why?
So my books, the ones that are published by Blood by Salt and A Hunt for Jackals, are both they're fantasy, they're military fantasy because the setting is predominantly military, predominantly focused on soldiers and military and political situations. And I definitely have had a lot of people say this feels like historical fantasy, but it doesn't directly tie to one specific historical period the way, say, like Guy Gavriel Kay all is, exactly where you are in history when you read one of his books. It's not like that. It's definitely amalgamated from a lot of different periods and cultures and times and places, but it definitely has a historical feel to it. So you can say historical fantasy, military fantasy. That's what I've got going on. I mean, I have a historical, like a historical fiction novel that I want to do someday,
Oh,
but
cool.
the stack of books for research is like as tall
Yeah.
as a dam, and it's very intimidating.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You don't get to make stuff up. You have to actually
Stick to
read.
it. Yeah.
So it's a little scarier, but maybe one of these days I'll also actually do historical instead of just fantasy. But I love both, and they sometimes can ride the line together. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, my kids always ask me that. My students are like, why don't you just write historical fiction? I'm like, I do this all day with you guys. I was like, I love being a historian, but I was like, it's kind of nice just taking, like you said, like those fun things that I like. And it might be a little bit more, fact-based in terms of history, but I also love just making it my own or making new cultures or,
there's a lot of freedom in fantasy, which is
yeah,
really fun. And I think that is why I chose to write in fantasy, because there were things I wanted to say that if I were tied to one specific period in history, I would be very limited in how I could say that. Maybe not impossible, but very difficult to say all the things I want to say. You can bring so many disparate elements together in fantasy that don't quite go together in history.
yeah,
And that's what's exciting about it. You really just have free run um of the world.
yeah.
And it makes for high drama, high stakes, and deep themes that you can have in historical fiction, but it kind of has to be toned down for reality, and you
Yeah.
have to kind of use more restraint. Otherwise, it's just going to be nonsense.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think I always think back to like Ursula K. Le Guin, where it's like I'm totally blank right now, but it's like book 3 in the Wizard of Earthsea, and there's like a group of people that they meet, right, that are nomadic, but like they float with the whales. And I
Mm.
was so surprised to find out, right, that there are actually like groups of nomadic people, right, in Indonesia that do that. And I don't know why that stuck with me as like a, like an eighth, ninth grader or whatever when I read them. I was like, God, that's so cool. And it made history, right? But then fantasy really fun. So I always think of stuff like that. And I don't know, my friend, I really feel like he was totally right with your book. He's like, he knows me. So he's like, this is so up your alley. He goes, this is like your exact thing that you like to read and write. So when you're saying this, I'm like, oh man, like, I'm like, I have 4 books I got, like, no offense to anybody, I got to finish. Right, because I'm
Yeah.
almost done on my list, but like, and I promise people reviews, but I'm like, I'm so ready for yours at this point. And I had 2 more friends recently tell me that because we were discussing writing, and they're like, "Oh man, you're really gonna like this book." So
Oh,
it
man,
kind
I'm
of
so
like
good. Whenever it happens, I don't care if it happens next week, next month, next year, but whenever it happens, I can't wait to hear your thoughts.
Oh man, I'll be honest, like I said before we got recorded, I need to palate cleansers at times, and I feel like this is gonna be a good one for me. So I'm like really, really excited. So it's definitely happening next month because I'm really close to getting these 4 done. And they've been really great books, like don't get me wrong. But my friend, he's like, this is gonna be your book. And I love when I get one of those, and like you mentioned, like, wine and fermenting. I feel like at a certain point, right, as a reader, like when you've read enough, right, your taste, right? Whether it's the cover blurb, you know what I mean, like subgenre. So for me, like I feel like that's like right up my alley. So I feel like I'm gonna have a really, really good reading summer. So it's gonna be awesome.
Excited.
All right, so number 3 is one of my favorites because we really get to dive in, to just like people's books and just like their love of writing those particular books. So what is your book by Blood by Salt about, and how did you come up with this idea?
Okay, well, avoiding all spoilers. Some of my themes,
Yes.
I feel like when I want to talk about themes, I'm like, that theme doesn't really come to fruition until book 3. Let's avoid that.
Ooh, interesting.
So, but overall, there's a lot of themes about cultural conflict, and about what it's like to be a pariah and how people find themselves in these strange and unique situations where they are um, kind of at odds with people and yet find themselves being useful to these people. So there's a lot of this was born out of my experiences when I was in the military, and I was a translator and in Iraq, and you just see all these unusual situations with cultural conflict, tribal conflict, but I know that sounds like ancient in the past, but at that time in 2008 and 2009 and 2007, through those years, there was a lot of talk about tribal politics and how to have a stable um, country when everyone's just fighting in a tribal way. And there was just all these things that I was learning and having to learn in order to do my job effectively and trying to understand, not just be there and translate, but comprehend all these really difficult cultural nuances in a place that was not my country. And that is a huge element of the story as well. We also have a strong underdog character that is dealing with a lot of difficult situations. And we have a very mysterious character who you don't get to know a lot about for a good chunk of the book. And you have to kind of make up your own mind about these things. You don't get told readily what the answers to all the questions are. You have to kind of, it's a little bit up to interpretation. So those are some of the like broader themes and ideas. It's also a very military story in the sense that it takes place within a battalion. The majority of the characters are part of this battalion. And the focus is a lot on their interpersonal dynamics and how they function, how they operate, and how they deal with the complicated political situations that start surrounding them. So those are the themes and the ideas. And the way that I came up with it's just not at all linear, and probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But this was actually all the way back in high school. One of my teachers assigned all of us to write a fairy tale. And we were given a list of like types of winds or storms, like tornado, hurricane, nor'easter. Mine was nor'easter, and you were supposed to write a fairy tale around that somehow. Mine was terrible. It was the worst. I read the other kids' stories, and I was like, this is pretty good. Mine was so bad. And because I was trying to write an epic fantasy apparently and didn't know that. And my teacher, instead of being like, you did not do the assignment, you did not write a fairy tale, she's like, I think you have a bigger story here, so I will just go keep working on that. And I did. and it morphed and it ended up looking nothing like that extremely silly story that I wrote in high school. But I kept working on it and kept working on it. And over time, it sort of accrued its themes. I didn't start out with these deep, rich themes. I was 15 years old. I was just like swords, fighting, danger, adventure, drama. I had nothing, deep going on there. But over time, with whatever was going on in my life personally, if I was struggling with my own flaws and my own, whatever was happening in my life, as I grew and matured, but also my military experiences, my experiences as a translator, and just a lot of different things that I went through in life just sort of melted into the story. And then the themes started to really bubble to the surface. And once I saw them, I really knew that I wanted to finish it out and do it justice.
Oh, that's awesome. I can't help but think like one of my characters is like tapped me on the shoulder. She's like, I want to talk to her. So I'm gonna have to ask you some questions after we get done. I'll have to email them to you because I've been like, I have this amazing character that decided that she was gonna be a main character, like a
Oh,
co-lead, and
that's
I'm like,
a tough one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I'm like, and she is so like she scares me. Like my other main, like my male lead, I would like to call him now. I'm like, he's even terrified of her. And yeah, but she's like, oh, she's gonna be cool to talk to. So I'd love to chat with you about that because I've been debating making because she's in the army, right? Like before, like I have a prequel novella set, so a trilogy, with how like they become monster hunters, like from like military.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I got some stuff I want to ask.
I'm all about it. Send me.
That's really cool. That's awesome. Well, the themes to me, again, I just keep thinking, yep, maybe can I get your book read before like, before I finish? And I'm such a moody reader, so I might have to.
You want to read it when it's going to hit you right. So it's like
Yeah.
that's
Yep. Yep. And right now I've been hit with a lot of these themes. I'm just like on a roll lately and I keep hitting like I don't know, that's what my writer brain needs, so my reader brain is just really absorbing it. But this sounds awesome. Do you mind just letting us know, maybe like the elevator pitch, or like the blurb or whatever you want to call it, just about By Blood, by Salt, just to, that way people can then like go to the link itself because you guys need to click on it. It's down below. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So the elevator pitch is it's about a debt soldier named Zetla, who his battalion is sent on a mission to the desert to capture what some people believe is a devil. They don't really know because these people are like holed up in these crags, and there's a lot of mystery surrounding them. So maybe they're people, maybe if they're devils, they don't know. And they're supposed to go capture them to kind of prove that they're defeatable.
Mm.
And while they're on this mission, it turns out that there is a political coup in the works, and their battalion kind of gets caught in the middle of it, having to sort of choose a side. And meanwhile, this puts Zetla's life in danger as well because he has some secrets of his own, and also he's kind of a persona non grata in this empire. So, yeah, and that's the elevator pitch.
I'm really sorry to those other four authors that I promised. I did tell you guys end of the summer, so it will be done by the end of the summer. But I know what I'm doing next week on vacation, so it sounds awesome. I had somebody the other day. I was like so into the theme, and I was so there's other things, and they side text me. They're like after they watched this interview, they're like, "Can you ask them about like the elevator pitch?" Or the description. I go, oh yeah. So I keep trying to
I'm
break
terrible.
that.
I'm usually like I'm talking about these like sort of like abstract and esoteric aspects of the
Yeah, yeah.
story. And my husband will do that. He'll be like, you need to tell them what happens. I'm like, oh, I was just gonna tell you about the themes.
Which, as a writer and a reader,
Yeah.
I want, right? But I've had quite a few readers tell me, like, they like kind of been direct me every so often. They're like, you asked a lot of writer questions. They're like, I'm a reader. I want the reader answer. I'm like, okay. So I want them to know I'm trying. I've been getting better. But it's hard because you're a totally different person, I think, as a writer reader versus
Yeah,
just a,
because you're looking at craft and you're looking
yeah,
at building something instead of like consuming something. And those are both two very different
yeah,
experiences.
yeah,
And sometimes when you're in a reader mode, I mean, you may still be analytical, but
yeah,
you're not trying to break everything into a million pieces. You don't want to see the seams. You're hoping it's seamless.
yeah.
And as from the writer perspective, you're like, how do I make this seamless?
Yep.
How do I hide the seams?
Yep.
So
Yep.
you thought I just wrote this on the first draft and it was easy, which it wasn't.
Well, it's just so funny because like my friend talks about that. He's like, no one's ever seen my blood, my sweat, and my tears. You know, he goes, that was on the paper, but then I typed it, you know. Like,
Yep.
that's
So
there.
true. There have
Yeah.
been times where I read something and I'm like, it's so perfect and it's so beautiful and it's so seamless that you kind of sit there and go like, how did you do this? But now that I'm going through it myself, I'm like, they sweated over that, man.
Yeah.
They were burning. They were struggling. Like it looks flawless, but it they struggled for it. Maybe there's a couple prodigies out there that did, but most of them did.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm on like draft 5 right now, which like it's like 5.5, and my editor, like development editor, she's amazing. She's like the queen of development editing, and she's like, I think you need at least 2 more drafts. And that was when I was still at like 4.5, and I was like, so I like moved stuff back, and which I'm glad. Like I've learned so much, but that's also I just want to point out to audience. I've had some people ask me like, because everybody always reads books before they interview people. I stopped doing that. Now, some people I still I can't help it, right? If I was already on vacation, I already would have read book 1 for you. So, but like I have noticed as a writer that when I get the director's cut of, like this is what I was trying to do, or these are the themes, it has helped me so much. And now I'll do this for podcasts too. I'll go on to podcasts where people talk a little bit about, their book, and then I'll go read it. I learn so much more, and I enjoy it more as a reader because I'm enjoying it more as a writer. And I don't know, it's almost been like a master class, in how to do stuff. And I'm like, people tell me like, you're like, oh, I tried this theme, and I'm like, okay, did it work for me? Did it not? Why did it? Why didn't it? And I don't know. I just end up finding I get a lot more out of it. So I just want to point that out because like a few people asked that in the audience, and I'm really, really excited to read your book, but I was like really trying to wait because I know I'm going to get more out of it because I have every single time after I've interviewed someone and then read.
Well, that makes sense because it's a little bit like when you read a book like in high school or in college or whatever, and you get to do it either in a group or you have a really good teacher who's there to
Yep.
like get to lead you to ask really good questions and to delve into the text in a really rich way.
Yep.
So if you literally get to talk to the person who wrote it, then you get to do all of that cool extra stuff that enhances the work ahead of time, which that makes perfect sense. I can see how that would be really, really enhance the experience.
Yeah, yeah. And even if somebody does something that didn't work, I don't know, because they told me what they were trying to do, like I don't know, it works better for me. I don't know, you know what I mean? Like I don't find as much fault. Not that I don't find any faults, but I don't find as much as I would have, I think. We like Brandon Sanderson, there was one book where I'm like, oh, I was so expecting this thing and it didn't happen. And for years I expected this thing. So, but if he had told me ahead of time, right? Like I was trying to do this thing and I don't know if I quite did it, like I don't know. I feel like that my expectation was built up in a different way. So I feel like
Yeah.
now with talking to all of you and then doing it this way, my expectations are different. And I don't know, it ends up making things more enjoyable for me. So
I get that. That makes a lot of sense.
I'm over here on my island doing my thing and having a good time, me and Wilson, Uh, so I definitely want to make sure, that we're dividing up question 4, for book 2. So I know it's hard, right? Because we can't do spoilers and stuff because we want people to read book 1. But from what you can tell us about A Hunt for Jackals, love the name, what is that about? And what can readers expect in terms of that sequel?
Okay, I think probably the best way to put it without any spoilers is that it's the battle book. It's where, so like book 1, you're starting to see all these cracks and issues and problems popping up, and you're kind of, leading into all hell breaking loose, sort of. And in book 2, you start to get more of the action, which I'm a character driven reader and writer, so the focus is still very much on the characters, but it's where the big battles happen. Which I say that just because I was so excited to write that.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
And so it's that, but also I think it's the book where you get to dive deep into some of the characters that up until that point you don't really know anything about. They're definitely kind of a complete mystery. So it's basically where the world breaks open and war breaks out. So those are the big things that you can expect in that book. You continue Azetla's journey, you continue with the other characters that you met in book one, but a lot of new information is revealed, and you get to see different parts of the world, and get a few, but not all, answers to some questions.
That's awesome. I actually, so sorry, I forgot a sub question. I'm hearing one of my like watchers slash listeners in my head, and I know if I don't ask this, particularly for your book, that he's gonna like send me a message. So, which he should, because I was so excited to ask you that one. But it totally makes sense now too. So, do you mind just telling us a little bit more in terms of the cast of characters, particularly for By Blood, by Salt, just so our audience can kind of get a feel for them a little bit.
Yeah, so I already told about Azetla. He's our dead soldier, and he's decidedly our main character in book one. There is another character who I'm not even going to mention the name of, because that's the mysterious character, and just going to have to read it to figure that one out, and you're supposed to figure it out on your own anyway. And there is also the captain of the battalion. His name is Captain Hodge, and he's sort of Azetla's mentor, but it's a complicated relationship because of their ethnic and religious differences. So in fact, that's kind of the case with the Zetla and all the people who in his battalion. He has some real friends there, but it's always a complicated relationship. There's another sergeant named Joseph Radabe, and he's another important character, a close friend of Azetla's, and kind of the one who helped Azetla gain a little bit of clout in the battalion, so that he has a little more status than he's technically allowed to have. And then we have the Cora James, who's the Emperor's brother, who is kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, and would really just rather stay at home if he was allowed to. Really rather stay at home. And his advisor, Wesley Ferris, who is a little bit of a schemer and a planner, and is trying to make things happen in the Imperial Court. And then you have Emperor Riata, who is the emperor of these lands that span from sort of greener places up north to the desert, which is where the majority of the story takes place, is in these various provinces throughout the desert. And he's sort of an antagonist, but you don't quite get into the weeds of his character in the first book. I'm trying to remember if there's anyone else that I really feel like I need to mention from those are probably the big players right there in the first book. So
That's awesome. I love that. It sounds like there's going to be a lot of really fun, antagonistic things back and forth between them, which I just think makes a great story. But I really like that. That just sounds awesome. I hear my friend again. I know he's going to be interested in what point of view by Blood by Salt is written in.
It's a multi-POV story. So I'm basically everyone I just mentioned is a POV character. Some of them get like Azella gets a ton of screen time. A couple of those others might only get one or two scenes from their POV. I like multi-POV because I like to look at people from the outside before I look at them from the inside, because if you're in the interior of a character, you can just sort of dictate how the reader's supposed to feel about them by telling you, like, I feel this way. But if you're watching that character from someone else's perspective, and you're being as honest as you can be about that, you're going to see flaws in that character that they can't see in themselves. You're going to see maybe they don't realize how harsh they're being. They don't realize how difficult they come across. And you won't notice that when you're inside their POV, because they don't see that about themselves.
Yeah.
So I like triangulating. I like using multiple POVs to find out what's the truth. Because if you're in my brain, you're only getting how I see myself, and my perception of myself is flawed. And I need other people in my life to be like, you're not being honest with yourself. And so I like to do that with my characters.
I think that makes total sense. And I like that because it is more realistic, right? Like I had, I don't know, I gave like feedback out, like surveys to students, and they were like, oh yeah, and like there were some things I thought I was doing that was helping that was not helping. So I'm so glad that I gave out the feedback. And then I was able to explain like, oh, I'm really sorry. Like I was trying to do this for, for this unit or whatever. And then, built a better relationship because then I was thinking about things, but then they were thinking, same thing, right? Because they're flawed people too. So I like that because I think that again just adds greater to a story. But I also like that because that's like what I was saying, like my other character, she was kind of like, well, like both of them were like, yeah, that sounds more fun. And I'm like, yeah, it's nice because my male lead is not perfect. And I'm thinking of like when I was that age, right? Like he's younger than me. I'm thinking when I was that age, like I just said that earlier today, there were like two situations that popped up. And at the time I thought I was totally right and that person did me wrong. 14 years later, I'm like, God, was I stupid? Like
But like, I was so wrong.
I literally said to a kid, I go, he like asked me about a time where I was so wrong. I told him, I'm like, this situation, I go, I thought it was the other person. And I'm like, nope. Today I can be like, no, it was just this guy, like I was the flawed one. I can tell you that right now. But I think that's where a lot of people, right? Even no matter what the relationship is, I was talking to Charlotte and somebody else about this last week too. Is like, like you said, like it's really hard for us to see our flaws, right? We need other people to do so. So for me, when I read a story and like, like Jim Butcher, I think does a good job with Dresden of bringing in other POVs, but like it's conversationally. I like Kevin Hearn's like Iron Druid Chronicles. He adds a whole nother like two characters, and it's so nice because then you do get to see each of their flaws, and I don't know, it just built such a better story. So
It
I
does.
agree. I think it creates a better tapestry than just having like one POV, in my opinion. Some people do it really well. Like I think Jim Butcher does a pretty good job, but
Yeah.
not me.
A single POV can be phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's more for me and the kind of the things I want to know about a character. Sometimes I can't find those things out until I've looked at that character through someone else's eyes. And so I think even if I were writing a single POV, I would still do that as like a side exercise to try and see the things that I'm missing. I think it just helps
Good
me
point.
see the characters.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, I like that. I didn't think about that. That's actually a good point. I had a friend ask me all the time. Like that's why I was trying with one book to write from single POV, and that's like I'm like it's just not my strong suit because I think I like you were saying I really like the multiple POV because I do like I never ever realized it till you just said it, but that's why I do like it is I'm seeing the flaws, I'm seeing the growth more. I don't know. It's kind of more my jam reading.
I had a weird experience. This is gonna sound a little odd, but like was when I don't remember if it was when I was in my language training school or where I was when I was doing this, but there was a political, sort of conflict thing that was happening in international affairs at that time. And I went and I read an article in English and an article in Hebrew and an article in Arabic. They did not agree about what was happening at all. Like, it was a specific event that happened, and everybody had a very different idea of what was really going on. And I was just like trying, and I kept reading different, trying to understand what was really which of course, and that's not to say that I actually I figured it out, but it helped me understand how difficult it can be to triangulate the truth about something,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
when everybody has all these biases and their own perspective and their own culture and their own idea, and they're all flawed and they're all emphasizing different things. And, you can do that with anything. But I just remember that experience kind of stuck with me, because I just remember being so frustrated
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and feeling like actually knowing more is making me more confused because I can read in all these languages, but nobody agrees.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And
That's
that's
just a
what
great
it feels like with my
exercise.
character.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's awesome. Sorry. The social study teacher in me is like, why have I never done that with a current event? Like, like we'll study this, but it's like, I actually really like that because I think that's, we were just discussing earlier, like ways to improve, right? Curriculum or whatever. So I'm gonna steal that from you. I'm gonna give you credit though. I'm gonna give you
It was
credit.
such a learning experience for me. I loved it. I was so, I realized I felt very privileged to be able to access these things and to try and understand things. Not that I figured it out, but I tried.
Yeah.
You know, I tried.
It's crazy to me though, like, right? Like, and I'm gonna mention I'm gonna talk about this very day with my students. I'm gonna say, like, isn't it crazy that somebody that is trilingual for the same current event, right? Still couldn't figure it out. So how are you supposed to, right?
So why would we think we've got it figured out? Random in number 70. I know the solution.
That's awesome. But I never thought of that though from that standpoint, but also like that's really cool to think of from a writing standpoint. So I don't know, it just really shifted my mindset. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, that's really cool. I feel like now I got to do that, right? I got to pick an event from one of my books, right? But then like write about it from a POV from whether it's different country or group or whatever, socioeconomic class, like whatever, right? Like that just be, I don't know. It sounds like a really cool writing exercise that I have to.
It is, and obviously, if like anytime I end up writing a POV, like usually I'm trying to write the one that's going to be in the book, but sometimes like I go through 5 different attempts to find the right POV for a certain scene, but they all help enhance the one that ends up making the cut.
Fair.
Absolutely, because now I know better what each of these characters are thinking and feeling. I know more about them. Weird anecdotes popped up in those failed attempts that now I can just know that that's about something about that character I didn't know before. Yeah. So it really helps me figure people out.
No, that's really cool. Sorry, my writer brain's like whirling over here because I feel like that's so helpful because I have I have a dark fantasy, I have 3 different groups, and like that's like exactly the story wasn't working because I didn't understand how to get their POVs, from each other and like a certain event. So for me, I'm like, oh, I think you just helped me solve the issue because I could just write right from each of those POVs, helps me understand them better, the overall issue, makes the story better. So that's just super cool. I just want to point out to the audience, this is the exact reason and other authors that I interview people. Because I've interviewed, like, I think you got to be like, I don't know, by now I might be over 200. I don't know. But like, this is something different, right? And even if somebody else said something similar, this idea hits me far different, which is what I was getting.
A different angle, even because we all have similar tools, but we apply them differently. And then you're like, oh, I didn't do it that way. And I'm always listening. I'm like, oh, you tried that? Maybe I should try that.
My wife, she's like, oh, you're listening to another podcast. I'm like, listen, when we become a New York Times best-selling author, right, and we don't have
so glad.
Yeah. When I buy a book, she's like, oh, that's just your, oh, what does she call it? That's your education, right? I go, yes. Yeah, and just going to school, that's all super helpful. This is also why I tell authors, just talk about what you want to talk about, because that's what I call the magic. So that's awesome. I think a lot of people will get a lot out of that. I know when I get done with work this week and can actually get on vacation and write again, I'm going to be thinking about things far different. So I really appreciate that input. So I got to talk about SPFBO, of course. I love Mark. Mark is just like, I talk about somebody that uses their platform for good, right? I always tell my kids, you want to use your skills for good. And I love that Mark set this, contest up and, just helps people. It helps me see people, like I said earlier, helps me see people. So
yeah, when my mother-in-law came up to me sometime during the competition, because of course all my family's like following it intensely and everything. My mother-in-law came up and she's like, did you watch the video that Mark Lawrence put up explaining why he does SPFBO? And I was like, I hadn't watched it. And she's like, it was lovely. You need to go watch it right now. He talks about how he felt like he just, had a lucky time and lucky place. And he realized how much luck went into it. And it seems so hard to make it as an author. And he just wanted to give other people a little bit of extra luck, basically an extra opportunity. And she was very moved by that. And all my family, my parents, my husband's parents, my siblings have, come to appreciate a lot of things that some of them wouldn't have even been interested in. Just because
oh, that's really cool. I have to just shout out Mark real quick because he probably won't even remember, right? But like there was one point, I think it was last year's contest, number 9. But I had said, right, I was like, oh, I really hope to one day, like, right, make this platform, do the same thing. And he was so nice and sweet. He goes, you're already doing that. I'm like, oh, he's like, yeah, by giving people, an opportunity. And I was just like, holy crap. I'm like, great point. I might not be to, the degree or whatever, but I was just like, man, what a great opportunity. And I don't know. I just think that's really cool. I always tell my kids about this contest and I'm like, talk about giving back to people. I don't know. I just think it's cool, especially in our industry, right? to see people not using their credentials or platform for the good of others. It's just nice to see that somebody is,
Yeah, it is pretty amazing. And I mean, obviously, I'm extremely thankful. I mean, I know that I'm sitting in a very like specific seat right now of having actually gone all the way to win the competition. But even when, it's in the early stages and you're just sitting there going, man, I just hope I get a review. But you know what? It's so hard to get your book out there because it is an ocean. It's an ocean of books and we all want to tell our stories, which is a good thing. But there's so many out there, and how do you possibly reach your audience?
Yeah.
And if somebody reaches down and gives you a hand up, man, that's amazing.
Yeah. 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 Well, I even like I said, the list, I'm like, I just love it. I try and find you guys everywhere. You know what I mean? Like I am looking constantly. People are sending me recommendations, people are sending me emails. Like I'm everywhere. I'm in all these groups. Like my wife, she's just used to it now. If I have 5 minutes and we're not doing something, or if my son's just chilling, I'm gonna be on there trying to find an author in a book, right? Like I'm trying to find you guys on Instagram, X, like Facebook, whatever it is. And I feel like if I can't find people and I'm actively looking, it's really hard, right? And when the list comes out with those 300, like I said, I just go through, I'm like, follow, 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 if I haven't followed someone already. But it's amazing how many new people I find. Like, like yourself, I'm like, what the hell have I been doing? I feel lazy, as a podcaster. And I'm like, that just tells you the algorithm is not helping really like very many people. It only helps the people usually that are at the top, right? Or who have the money, or companies and stuff. So I feel like it is so hard to get recognized. And I found a few books on Amazon recently where I'm like, holy crap, like why is Amazon, it knows my taste, right? Why is it not sending me these books? I've read a couple and they're totally up my alley. So I feel like it's really hard from a reader standpoint too, right? To expand and to find the author, right? Where it's like that next book. So I'm so glad that my friend was like, check this list out. You're going to really like this person, read the book and told me that. Because I still a lot of times have to go on recommendations, not because of stars or whatever, but just to see people, because the algorithm, it is really difficult, especially lately. So
That's why personal recommendations are so important, because at the end of the day, if you're just like, wait, if whatever is going to be suggested to you is either going to be the most popular stuff, which all is great. We're happy for
yeah.
things to be awesome and popular. But if there's something out there that is actually just your most perfect book, but nobody knows about it, but your one friend found it and is like, this is for you.
Yeah.
That right there. It's a small thing, but it starts and it's gold.
Yeah.
Somebody saying, no, I know you're gonna love this, and you may never have heard of it. Just trust me, I'm your friend. Trust me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's how I found Kevin Hearn, leaving college for like my bachelor's. Like my friend was like, "Oh, this is amazing." I just wasn't into urban fantasy at the time, I thought, right? And then 10 years later, I was like, "Oh, I had a gift card." I thought, "Oh, my friend Tyler, we've been friends for decades, right?" I'm like, he's got to know my reading taste. I was like, I'm gonna try it. And now, like, book one, like Hounded, was the first urban fantasy book that I've read, and oh my, it changed my life. Like I like now I want to write in it, right? And I read all these great books, Patricia Briggs, Jim Butcher, Deborah Dunbar, like you name it, right? And I'm thinking like if he hadn't have recommended that to me, I never would have picked it up,
Yeah.
And yeah, my whole world would be totally different, be way more gray, right? So yeah, I totally agree. Like a lot of times those personal recs are like right on the money, right what you need. But speaking of personal recs, let's get back to your book. So what does it feel like to win SPFBO 10, and how did you decide you're going to enter the contest?
So I don't actually remember how I found out about it in the first place. I don't know if it was like a recommended post on Facebook
Yeah.
or what, but I somehow came, or maybe I came across it. I honestly can't remember when I came across
Yeah.
it the first time, but it was somewhere in the midst of SPFBO 9.
Hmm.
And veering towards the end of the last 2 or 3 months of the competition, as they were getting closer and closer to finding out who the winner was. And I just started following it because I was like, well, this is for indie fantasy specifically. That's interesting. And so I every time something would pop up. So I think at the end it was Murder at Spindle Manor and Hills of Heather
Oh,
and Bone,
yeah.
neck and neck, very
Yeah.
close. Not quite as close as this
You
one.
guys-
Um, but I was like reading these reviews and the interviews, and I was like, Well, this is like the best exposure anyone could not pay for. So, like,
Yeah.
what on earth? So I looked up the competition. I looked up and I was like, this works perfectly with when my book is going to be publishing. It's going to be publishing just in time to enter the competition. Because so I decided that, hey, why not give it a shot? Maybe I don't get in because, of course, more people wanted to be in the
Yeah.
competition. They had to keep, only about half the entrants were actually able to be
Yeah.
part of the competition. So, it was just one of those things where, me and my husband were just sort of brainstorming ways that we could get the book out there, and why not enter a competition? How cool would that be? 0% did I think I would win even or be a finalist or anything. I was just hoping for a good review. I think that's what most people who enter the competition are just like, I hope somebody gives me a nice review, somebody with a little bit of platform, and
Yeah.
then a couple of people hear about it and they tell their friends about it. We get a little ball rolling. That was what I was hoping for. Those are my expectations. I kind of figured my book was a little niche for it because it's actually quite a low magic story, which for some people is a big turnoff. I totally get that. Some
Yeah.
people we want the big beautiful magic systems. I totally get it. That's not my book. That's not what's in there. So that's something I thought might turn some people off.
Yeah.
And it's a more contemplative story, I think, especially when you say it's military fantasy. There is action, but it's a very layered, character-driven story. And so I was like, people are gonna think it's not enough magic and that it's a little too contemplative. And so I was like, that's okay. I'm giving it a shot.
Yeah.
And then I really did luck out, and luck is the proper word because I got assigned to a judge who happened to really resonate with the book in all the different levels, and they liked all those things about it. Could have gone the other way.
Yeah.
And then of course the rest of it was just a roller coaster of oh my goodness, an amazing review. Oof, that was a rough one. I get pretty thick skin, so I don't like have beef if somebody doesn't like my book. It doesn't bother me. I'm like, you know what? Not everything's for everybody. It's fine. But emotionally, like off the internet, like I'll go tell my husband how I feel about this, and I get over it pretty quickly, but still there's emotions, okay? So it can be a little bit rough on the heart. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and to go up and down and up and down like that. And then we had that, of course, photo finish, not even a photo finish, complete tie. And I at the time I was like, are they gonna do, you don't know what's gonna happen. And then they did the tiebreaker and it worked the way it did. So I was a little dizzy actually. I was kind
Yeah.
of useless. Little kids, they were like, what is mom doing? She's checking the thing, like I was um not functioning properly for a couple of days after that.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Uh and I'm extremely thankful. It's to have gotten to be part of the competition and then to have gotten to have the experience of so many people loving my book and seeing in it what I hoped I put in it. Like you don't
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
if you succeeded, right? You're like, I thought I said this, but did I say this? Did I say it well enough that someone can hear it? And
Yeah.
and when somebody says, yes, you said it the way I wanted to hear it, and now I can really resonate with all these themes and all these characters. They mean a lot to me. It's beautiful, and that's just a shock. That's a shock to the system because there is a part of you that thinks, well, no one's gonna resonate
Yeah.
with
No, totally. Yeah.
just
Yeah.
came out of my brain. Like,
Yeah.
why would anybody care about that?
Yeah. 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 That's really funny. It's so funny to me because like Adrian and I had chatted right before. It must have been like 3 or 4 weeks before, probably 3 weeks. And I was like checking in and stuff. And by the time I had talked to him again, I think it was like you guys were in the tiebreaker, and he was just like, "I'm just so tired, dude." He
I
goes,
know.
"You know what I mean?" Yeah.
He was such an absolute gentleman because before the official end of it had been announced, while we were both just still going, what? What's happening?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He immediately messaged me and he was just like, I don't know what's happening, but congratulations to both of us and or one of us. I don't, he was like so friendly and so kind, even while we were both sort of in a bewilderment state. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Adrian is a real one. He was so kind.
I just felt so bad. Maybe it was like maybe I think it was even closer actually to that. And maybe it was like a few days, I forget. But yeah, it was like he was like, I'm just so tired.
Yeah,
Because he
that's
says in the
he's
roller
like, my
coaster.
emotions can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, yeah.
like, I cannot, the up and the down and the maybe and the no, and I'm just refresh. Like it's
He said, he goes, I think he said, he's like, I just had to take, he goes, I just have to take a couple days. I can't remember if it's like, or what. He's like, I'm just not going to be on for a few days, guys. He's like, thanks, and like sent messages to people over. I messaged him like, maybe like the day before when it was the tiebreaker. Because like, he goes, yeah, hopefully it doesn't go to a tiebreaker. And then it happened.
I
And
can't
it's,
believe that.
it
And
was,
I told him I was like, I think he's like, well, how are you feeling? Again, total gentleman, gracious and so kind in the midst of neither of us really understanding what was happening.
yeah.
And I was like, I think I'm gonna go melt. He's like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Oh, that's really awesome. I just think it's so cool though, because like you were both in a very, similar spot, in terms of like, releasing, these books in particular and stuff. And it's just so cool, I think, too, which I think is also a beauty of the contest, right? And I think everybody thinks like, I have to publish 7 or 8 books, right? Or whatever, right? And that's not necessarily the case. Like some people do, right? But I've seen quite a few people, which I love this contest for. And whether or not they're a semifinalist or a finalist, I believe it was like, maybe it was last year. It was like K.E. Andrews was like a finalist.
Yeah, she was, and she had a semifinalist
Yeah.
prior to the.
Yes,
Yes,
yeah,
she
yeah.
did.
Yep,
So
yep.
she had Hills of Heather and Bone in the finalists, and she came in like with point zero
Yeah,
0.05
yeah. Yeah.
second, but she had Assassins of Grin and Secret some previous contests from previous.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it was just so funny, like to me, where I've had quite a few people on this show. They're just about to release, and we're like talking, like, yeah, I might enter SPFO. And it's funny that I've had like, I lost count, like maybe 20, 30, like just like, yeah, I'm just gonna release, I'm just gonna try it.
Messes everything up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know. It's probably spam. There we go. Sorry, I didn't know it was on.
Oh, it's okay. Still got it. I thought maybe I lost it.
There we go.
Perfect. Yeah, I just think it's funny. Like I had some people where they're like, "Oh no, there's no way I'm gonna like go deep or anything," and then they became like a semifinalist or a finalist off their like first like book, right? Not the first one they wrote, right? It might be like their fifth or sixth that they actually wrote, but first release. I don't know. I think there's just so many cool things about the contest overall. But even the shortlisted, where people don't make it in because of like the limited number, like Mark was so cool. They posted that too, and I went through that list too, and I was like, there are some amazing books on here, so it was really cool.
I mean, especially for the initial, coin flip
Yep.
part of it, there is zero reason that the ones that didn't make it couldn't have just gone on to win it if they had. Like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have no idea what was in, unless you go out and read those books, you don't know. They might have been an amazing set of 10 finalists out of that one too.
Yeah. Some have went on
Not
to
make it.
no, yeah, yeah. I just want to point that out because it's such a good point that you make. Because there are some that actually didn't make it into that contest, but then they actually went. And I've seen several of those authors. They're like, "Well, I didn't make it just because of whatever," and they were cool. They like totally get it, but they were like, "I'm going to enter these other ones." And I've seen several of those books win not just 2, but 3, 4 awards. In a different, in several different contests, which is like again, like, that's why people like my wife. She's like, "You're like a kid in a candy store on this day." I'm like, "I really am." Because I just all of a sudden I get 300 new friends and I get possibly that many new books, and then if they've written, more than one, it's like I just love that it's like a TBR surprise. It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really, really great.
So I know it's kind of a loaded question, but what has your greatest achievement in your writing career been so far?
Wait, believe it or not, this is actually one of the easiest questions for me to answer. And it's happened a couple times in a couple different ways, but the greatest achievement for me is when someone either messages me or if there's someone I know in real life and they come up to me and they talk to me and they told me that the book impacted them in a deep way. And that has happened a handful of times
Oh, awesome.
with people in real life or with people through the internet or, different ways. I had a friend, we were recently stationed at Fort Irwin, and I had a friend, someone I'd known, but we hadn't interacted a ton. We knew each other, but, casually. And she came up to me after chapel and was like, I read your books. And I'm like, oh no, because this is what in real life, like,
Yeah.
you know, and she read them on the sly. She didn't tell me. And in within 5 minutes, we were both crying. Because she was telling me all the things, the way the themes, she had read both of them, and the way the themes impacted her and the way that made her think about things. And then I was able to start asking her about her art because she has some art that she did, and we were able to connect as friends in a way we never had before because we shared this like passion for these themes, and we were crying about it. And that was just like, I was floored. I was floored that my book could impact someone that way.
Yeah.
And I had another friend like text me and say, I'm crying. And I know that like that sounds so stereotypical, but if you like realize that something you wrote made someone cry because they were connected to something you made up, um, that just blows my mind. That blows my mind. And I've had a few messages from people on Instagram where they're just like, "Hey, I hope you don't mind me messaging you." But no, I don't mind. I love it. I love it. And to say not just that they enjoyed it, which is wonderful. If somebody just says, "Hey, I enjoyed it," that's not bad. I'm not knocking that. I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
That's fantastic. But sometimes people say that it impacted them at a deeper level and that it like evoked emotions in them or made them think about certain things they were in their lives, like how they were approaching certain situations, how they were processing certain things. And there is nothing in the world that is as amazing as that to me. That like I mean that's all I could even hope for, because I want to tell a great story that people can enjoy at the surface level, but if it has a deeper impact,
Mm.
that's the sun and the moon. That's it. That's the best. That's all I could hope for.
I totally think I totally agree with you. I think that's awesome. And people always look at me weird, right? I was telling one of my friends, I was like, I'm going to ask her this question. He's like, it's going to be SPFBO 10. I said, I don't think so. And it's no offense to anybody. I go, but I don't think so. I said, because I think it's a deeper question, right? Like, and it's,
I could tell you that winning SPFBO has had the greatest impact on sales.
yeah, yeah,
And it has had the biggest impact on reach, which is important. And honestly,
sure.
if it weren't for that, some of those people who have messaged me would never have read
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
So
yeah, totally.
inadvertently, in a different like layer, sure, absolutely,
Yeah,
winning SPFBO is the biggest deal. But what I yearn for and what is most important to me, thankfully, SPFBO helped with that,
yeah,
is
yeah, totally.
for people to read the work and for it to resonate very deeply,
Yeah.
and to have more than just a surface meaning. That is by far my favorite thing. But yes, without SPFBO, how many people who have told me they loved it and it was so meaningful to them would never have even heard about it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. But I still think like, and that's so this is like what I don't know, like I think that's still for me, like I agree with you. I think that, and Charlotte said this yesterday, like good one. Like she was like, I just want people to read my books, and like what you said, like to get something deeper out of it and to connect, right? And I don't know if I could like, yeah, you could give me $1 million of sales, whatever, but like for me, like you said, right? Like you really, there's nothing, like your brain's up there, right? But really, you're creating nothing, and then you're putting something into it, and then people are getting their own emotions or their own learning process or whatever, like I don't know, like it's just that I think is really the real magic of a book, right? Or media in general, but a book in particular is different than other media, right? And that's what I think is so cool. People are like, my students are like, why are you spending all this time and energy writing whatever? I think I'm probably at 32,000 words. They're like, you're spending 10 years on, I got like 78,000 for one of my trunk novels. I'm kind of leaving it to, like you said, right? Leaving it to ferment for a while. But like, I can't wait for someone to tell me, I loved your book and, I really connected with this character or this theme. I'm like, to me, like that would just keep me going over anything else because I think that really makes it worth all the time and energy, right? Like, in the
It
long
does. There's a really beautiful metaphor that Dorothy L. Sayers is in a book, one of my favorite books. It's great for writers. I think it's every writer should read it, in my personal opinion. She wrote plays and novels, mystery novels and things like that. And in her book, The Mind of the Maker, she uses the concept, what she calls that all human creativity is functionally, as she phrases it, Trinitarian, like Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And what she means by that is the Father is the core idea, the driving idea that's like this is what we're going to create, and any kind of creation, a painting, a play, a movie, a song. This is the driving idea behind the creation that's going to happen. And then the Son is the physical manifestation of the thing once it's complete, right? So you have a book in hand, you watch the movie, the song is played on the instrument, you watch the play. She being a playwright, she used plays as the example most often.
Mm.
And then the spirit part is the resonance. That's where you have the audience interaction. It's not just here, I made this thing, it's static, it stands. No, we interact with it. We
Yeah.
feel it, we experience it, and then we say what we think about it and we talk about it, and there's this resonance that happens. And I find that metaphor to be so helpful for understanding the process of creation and she talks about things being in balance. If your idea is really strong, but you don't ever bring it to a physical manifestation, no good. And
Yeah.
if you don't have strong inspiration and resonance, however cool your idea is, it might not connect to the audience. So and she's like, these have to be in balance. And I just thought that was so helpful for me. And she
Yeah.
also speaks very beautifully, so she phrases it way better than I just did. But yeah, I think about that all the time, about especially the resonance part, where it's not just that this thing is now made and static, it speaks, and
Yeah.
you interact with it, whatever form the art takes.
Mm. I really like that because I'm thinking like I read like recently like read Small Favor with the Dresden Files, and there were 4 lines, and I think they're only like 5 words, right? And it's hard for me at times as like a teacher, educator, coach, dad, like whatever, to really like get people to understand. They're like, why do you do all this for other people's children? And there were 4 lines in the book that just like resonated with me where I was like, this is why. And it wasn't even just the words, it was like where they were in the book, right? But those 4 sentences, I could read those 4 sentences at any point, I feel like in my life, and I would get motivated again. They just resonate with me so much. My friend was like, "Why'd you post these?" I just kind of clipped them, so you didn't know, where they were. And he was like, "Gosh, those are great lines." And he private messaged me. I was like, "This is from this book. I've been trying to tell you to read this series." But like that, and I like the other ones. But the 4 lines, right? Just like changed the entire series for me because I was like, Jim Butcher gets my feeling, right? Of like why I want to help kids, why I do this, why I've spent more than half my life, in this mission, this crusade, right? And it just like, it felt really good to know that it resonated with somebody else and that somebody got it, even if it was a fictional character in Harry or whatever. But like, yeah, I mean, it really like astounded me. And I like really had to, which I'm glad you mentioned that in her, because now I'm going to go and, kind of read that book and reflect some more. Cause I'm like, how do I do that as a writer? Because that's what I want to do. I want to resonate, because
Yes, you
it was
want it
like
to
hold
go
on.
like an arrow straight to
Yep.
the heart.
Yep. 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 Yeah, it was wild. Don't get me wrong, right? I've read many great books, but there's not many books that, I've read that I consider great that do that. For me, that like, that transcends great in
That's
my
a whole
opinion.
other level.
Yeah.
It's what
Yeah.
we all want to do, but
Yep.
it is not easy to achieve.
Yeah.
But that's the goal.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. Well, that's awesome. So I know we're kind of winding down here, but I gotta ask, like, what have you learned in this last year when it comes to putting you and your books out there?
Oh, I mean, I've learned so much that I will try to summarize it very quickly, but
That's fine.
it's I think we say a lot of times like the phrase death by a thousand cuts. Well, in this it's like sort of, it gets its life by a thousand little things. Like it's
Oh, I like
often that.
that.
You know, it's never now obviously I think I'm there's going to sound a little bit hypocritical because I did have SPFBO and that's a big thing and that happens once a year, and there's 10 finalists and one winner, so it's not like it's a limited time opportunity, right? So I think coming from the experience of having that, I realized that that's an extra thing that I could not have banked on having. And it did make a big difference. But even before that, there was that slow realization that I have to just keep posting on Instagram or whatever the platform is that you use. Some people use Instagram, some people use YouTube, whatever it is you're using to try and tell people about your book. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I got this one post and it went viral and now I'm set. No, you just keep doing it, and you keep doing it consistently, and you keep doing it honestly. Because for me, if I'm going to make, like, some people, they do a great job making like really funny videos to try and talk about their, I'm sad to say I'm not funny. I wish I was, but I'm not. Like, I am the grumpy old man in my family, and so I can't do that. But I do something different. I do what is more natural to me. I don't try to do something that's like what works for someone else. I talk about my books. I post quotes because for me, prose is a big deal. So I feel like, oh, if somebody likes my prose, maybe they'll like my books. But it's a matter of just kind of like if you're going on a long run or doing half marathon or something like that, it's okay if you're slow, just keep going.
Yeah.
And keep bringing it up and keep trying to tell people about it. And sometimes that requires a little bit of courage, because in my case, my husband will tell anybody about my book. He's like, yeah, I was at work and 5 of the guys are going to go buy your book right now. I'm like, how did it even come up? He's like, I don't know. And I'm like, and he's like, why don't you bring it up? I'm like, because that's weird. And so I have to just keep working on the book that I'm working on, because that's the other thing. Don't get distracted by all the, oh, did somebody hate it? Did somebody like it? Nobody's reading it. I didn't make any sales. If you let that be all you're thinking about, you're going to stop writing. Don't do that. Don't let that stuff distract you from the actual important part, which is the writing part. And do it within what is more natural and more, like, not everybody can be on YouTube, but some people do it beautifully. Not everybody's going to make a great Instagram post, but some people do it wonderfully. Find the thing that you can do, and you can do without faking it, and you can just be honest and simple and straightforward, and do that consistently, because then you won't burn out. If you're trying to do something that's way outside and that doesn't feel natural at all. I mean, not to say you shouldn't push yourself. Like,
Yeah.
even doing these interviews is a little intimidating for me, but it's good. And I'm glad to do it because I'm getting to talk about my books, and I'm getting to learn to be more comfortable with something. So, this is me breaking into a new area.
Yeah.
But I think that that's the thing that I've just learned is that it's not like one person talks about your book on YouTube and then you're set. That's
Yeah.
not how it works. It's over and over and over again, and it takes a long time and to gain traction, and it doesn't happen just from one important big person liking your book isn't going to be the end all be all. I think I thought that at the beginning. I'm like, well, if some very important YouTube person liked my book, I'm set. That's it. That's all I need. That's not how it works. You get a burst and then it dies down, but you need to, like, keep fueling the engine till it starts to really roll. And so patience is key.
Mm.
And gratitude. I think sometimes if we get discouraged or frustrated, we have a tendency to want to kind of like vent online about, why didn't I get any sales, or why did someone not like my book? No, don't do that. Recognize that you're going to have those down moments where you feel discouraged and you feel like you're going nowhere and nothing's going to happen and you're stuck. But process that with your in real life people.
Yeah.
And when you go into the public space, encourage others and present your work as beautifully as you can, again and again and again.
I just love that advice. I was talking to a friend. I was trying to encourage him. He's like, "Oh, I don't have any sales." I'm like, "Well, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, well, I posted about this." I'm like, "Have you went on?" And so that's why I had him on this podcast. So I helped him hook up with some other people, and he's really good. He was amazing. Like we did a live book launch for Andrew and he was amazing. Like, dude, you got to do more of this. I'm like, this is your thing. I'm like, you might not think so because X, Y, and Z, but like, this is your thing. And it was awesome, the response, like, positive response that he got and stuff. But I was like so proud of him, for listening to that advice and putting himself out there and finding like his thing. And I'm like, I tell people, they'll ask me all the time, like, well, I'm like, did you watch the podcast? I'm like, people are on the podcast, first of all. And I get that's not everybody's thing, but sometimes like Angie did one with Andy Poliquin where it's like it's a written interview, right? Like maybe that's your thing, right? So I agree with you. Like find your thing. For me, it's this, like I like this.
Yeah, if you find something that you know you can do well, it's sustainable.
Yeah.
Um, like if I were trying to do something like either comedic or super clever, or like that's not sustainable because I'm gonna start to feel very uncomfortable and very stressed about that. So what I usually do, I post about my books. And then I also post about books I'm reading. I post about thoughts that I'm having as a writer. I keep it very casual and very simple, because that's what I think I can do effectively over a sustained period.
No, I think that makes total sense. Yeah. I always tell people like, what's your plan? Like my launch plan is like there's like public things, right? We have a lot of I'm lucky because in my area in Central New York, we have a lot of cheap things I could go to. I could pay $25 and go do this table, and just bring my stuff, just wheel it in, or $50. It's like that's kind of nice, right? Or I could just show up, and like that's really like I know I'm lucky because not all areas, right? Even in our state, or maybe like 2 counties over can do that. But in my area, I'm like where Cornell University is. So it's kind of nice. We got 3 colleges, so like I can set up booths at the community college I work at or something when they have like an art sale or something, I don't know. It's just, but I'm like, I know I'm a salesperson. I know I'm good with talking with people. People seem to like these interviews. I've gotten positive feedback. So from guests and whoever. So I'm like, I had other people ask me like, can you come and, be on our podcast and be like your personality or whatever? I'm like, sure, but then that's a way that I can then, as a podcast, like co-host, then talk about my writing and my books or talk about authors like you, right? So then I'm still trying to, kind of get other things in there. So it's nice I can use both. But for me, that really works. So I totally agree with you. I think find what works for you and, really make that like your key weapon. I mean, speaking of
Yeah.
military tactics and martial arts, that's really what you do, right? Like, try and find your best move and you really want to make that your strongest. So.
What do they say? You don't fear the man who knows 1,000 kicks. You
I was thinking that too. Yeah.
practice one kick 1,000 times. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
good at the one thing. You don't need to be a jack of all trades. Just do the one thing really well.
Yeah. No, I think that's really, really great advice. Well, I know we're winding down on time, but I had to ask that question. So I think that was a great answer. I think that'll help out a lot of authors and readers here too, just to get, your input. So I think that's awesome. We're going to go with that last question there. Do you have any news, updates, current projects, anything like that you can share with us?
Yeah, so the only news I have right now is that I am actively working very hard on book 3. And, sticking the landing is no easy task. So that's where all my focus is right now. But thankfully, both books 1 and 2 by Blood by Salt and Haunt for Jackals are also out on Audible now. So that's really exciting that people can do audiobooks for those. I have a lot of people in my family who are like audio only. So that was really great to finally have that open up to a whole new audience. So yeah, and 3 will eventually, once it's written, also get an audiobook. But meanwhile, both books have their audiobooks now, which is very, very exciting. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I think that's pretty much it. I'm working on book 3. I'm hoping to publish it in 2026. I am not going to be any more specific than that because I am still working on it. I'm at about 100,000 words, and my estimations range between 165K and 180K, and then I'm going to hope to trim it a little bit because I like to keep it tight, but we'll see if I can do it. Yeah, I think that's about.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm so excited because as a dad, I had multiple jobs. So it's like to be able to read, like listen on the way to or from work or to pick up my son from daycare, that it helps me to really like stay steady. Otherwise, if I'm just reading, that's where I'm like kind of stuck lately with some books is like, I like to do half and half. So I'm kind of done with the Audible version or like, Daniel and Ford, I'm done with the Warden on the reading version. So now I'm like just listening to the audio, on the way to vacation. So for me, it's just so much easier to do 50-50 and I get a really good experience from it. So I think
And I think if for me, I'm almost exclusively, I can't even do Kindle. Like I can only do physical books. That's just because I write in the margins. That's a big deal for me. I need to be able
Yeah.
to interact with the text. But my husband, the absolute best way for him to read a book is through audiobook. He will retain it, he will enjoy it. Whereas if he's reading it physically, it just doesn't stick.
Yeah.
So for me to have the audiobooks, and also I have tons of people in my family who are dyslexic, like super dyslexic, and they love to read, but so much more would they rather read with an audiobook.
Yeah, I don't blame them. There's some books recently where I've like have totally loved the audio more, right? Than no offense, then they just got such a great, audio narrator. I still try and, do what I can, but like there are times where it's like there's a book that I'm like, I just love the narrator. I won't do 50-50. I'll do 70-20, or 70-30 or 80-20, whatever. Like whatever's gonna get me to enjoy the book the most at this point, like that's honestly what I'm doing. So I recommend that to everybody. And don't you guys care what anybody says? Like you just go
Oh,
into these authors. But yeah, that's just great advice. Well, I just want to remind everybody in our audience, because maybe this is your first time watching or listening. You can find all the links below, all books, social links, things like that. So make sure you click on those. I'm actually also just going to put SPFBO 10 in there as well, just so you guys can go and check out Mark's site as well. I did that for Adrian's episode 2 that we did earlier this season as like a check-in. So I want to make sure people are checking those out because again, you're going to find these great authors and a lot of people around the contest. So my TBR is just like I have so many great books now because of SPFBO. I just think I discovered like 4 years ago, and I'm so thankful I got on Twitter and did that because I've just made some amazing friends too and had some awesome guests from it. So my life has really been improved from SPFBO just from being on the outside. So I think that's really, really awesome about the contest. So please, guys, make sure you do that for us. Make sure if you're reading or doing Audible or whatever, please make sure you're reviewing all products. We've had authors, artists, directors. Just make sure you guys are reviewing all products. That just helps everybody in general. But thank you so much for coming on today. This was so much fun. I love talking craft. I always have to rate
thank you
myself
for
back.
having me. This was
Yeah.
a delight. I enjoyed it so much.
Oh, it's awesome. I'm like waiting on a few people to contact me. I'm still waiting on my summer schedule. I have literally till Friday for them to figure it out. But I'm hoping to do just like a couple live seminars, even if it's just like an hour with like 3 authors such as yourself. I got some amazing military fantasy people, or historical fantasy, like whatever genre you want to go. But like I think like you would fit in with one of my craft ones in particular. So I'd love to propose that to you. I think you would fit in really well with the other 2 authors that I have kind of trying to see if they can slot for that. Maybe we
Well,
can.
yeah, just once you know, send me the info and if I'm able to, I'll do it. Like
Yeah, yeah,
obviously
we can.
I can't
They were really flexible
guarantee
too. So
anything. I have children and I homeschool, so
yeah,
I am not I don't promise anything until we have the dates locked in.
that's very fair. That's very fair. I don't blame you at all. I've tried doing this since last year, so I totally get it. But I'm like really excited because I feel like even we could just get something at some point, I think it'd just be so cool. I love where like Adrian and MJ do like their craft talks because they're just so much
Yeah,
different.
he does all those like master classes and things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. And I'm like, I always listen, but I was like, want to be in it because I think that's also, he was like, it's a different perspective when you're in it. So I'm like, I got to get my schedule to a point where I can do this. But yeah, but I'd love to have you on again, either way, talking about, when you get closer to book 3 or something like that, if you want to do a check-in, at some point, I always give alumni first dibs, on seasons and stuff like that and episodes. I always save slots and stuff where I can. But yeah, I'd love to have you on in the future and chat some more about this, especially once maybe we could do a spoiler episode
Oh,
for
man, if I could talk spoilers, I might talk too much.
I started talk. It's fine because I started to talk to a couple other people. Like Peter McLean and I talked about that because I'm almost done with his series. And he was like, "Oh man, when you get done with book 4, he's like, you gotta tell me." He's like, "We'll do a spoiler episode." So he had that idea, and I'm like, I really like that idea. So I think that would be
Two to
super fun.
Ramble, they do theirs where they have like a spoiler section and then they're like, we're telling everything.
Yep,
So,
yep,
which
yep.
I appreciate that they divide it up because
Yeah,
then I can watch the part that I can watch if
yep,
I haven't read it. And then I'm like, or if it's a book I know I won't read, then I will.
yeah, yep. Well, I did that with a few, yeah, for them, and that's where I think Peter was talking about. I was like, oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, so I'd love to do that at some point. I think that'd be like super, super
That
cool.
would
Maybe
be
we could do that before book 3. Like I'll get book 1 and 2 out of the way. We could do that kind of in anticipation or something. That might be a cool like in between. That sounds
amazing.
really Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I hope you have a great rest of the day. And like I said, I'll email you later on today and we'll get all the info to you and be all
Awesome. Thank
situated.
you so much.
Yeah, not problem. If anything else, you just let me know and we'll get it situated for it. All right,
Absolutely. All right.
perfect. I'll see you later. Have a good day. Bye.